The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom had so much to live up to. It's been 6 years since Breath of the Wild revolutionized the open world genre, and the game's influence can still be felt to this day. But many like myself wondered how well Tears of the Kingdom would be able to expand upon what made Breath of the Wild so great. And ultimately, Tears of the Kingdom... Do I want to do this video? I mean, the game's good and everyone's talking about it, but I don't feel like I have a lot to say about it. Okay, let's try something else. I've been making content on the internet for about 4 years now, but the past few months have been the longest stretch since then that I've gone without doing anything for my personal channels. In that time, a lot happened. I graduated from university, I traveled the world with friends, and during this time, I accomplished some things and made memories of people that I'm so blessed to be able to call my friends. And at the same time, had experiences with people that I regrettably can't say the same for anymore. But all of it, from the good and the bad, felt more important to me in the moment than what I was doing before, where I was just playing and writing about video games. I was feeling way more fulfilled than I had been in years. But that time of my life now is over. I'm not going to be able to go back to it. So now I'm just trying to figure out, what do I do now? Street Fighter VI is everything I've wanted fighting games to be for so long. After fighting games from Capcom seemed to flounder after the disastrous launch of Street Fighter V, 6 takes feedback from what fans have wanted from the genre for years and actually puts it into practice to make an entry that... No one's gonna watch this. My last video didn't even get like 100 views when I talked about fighting games. No one cares. I'd just be saying the same thing that everyone else is. I have things lined up for my future, but grad school is still months away from me right now, so I'm in a position where I have the time to go back and start making content again, and deep down I want to. You would think that now would be the perfect time. I mean, there's so many new games to play and talk about right now. Why shouldn't I immediately try to capitalize off of all of that? But honestly speaking, I wasn't feeling much drive or motivation to play, well, anything. Going back to this hobby didn't feel as meaningful to me after stepping away from it for so long. Nothing that I went into excited about made me feel like how I thought it would, and I couldn't figure out why. I mean, the games were good, but none of them were making me feel like I could pull anything from them that I would be excited to talk about or have something unique to say about them that no one else had. It got to a point where it felt like I was almost falling out of love with games entirely, and that scared me. Games were important to me for my entire life, and for the last 3 years, it's been a core aspect of how do I choose to express myself and my skills in a creative outlet. And if I lose that passion, and I can't go back to the life I had before, it feels like I'm losing a part of me. Hi-Fi Rush is an awesome rhythm action game with an aesthetic that oozes style and charm. The rhythm action game hybrid is a genre that's seen a growing number of interpretations and iterations in the past, and as a big fan of the concept, this game feels like it's tailor-made for me. And in this video, I wanted to talk about... This game came out months ago. No one's gonna care if I talk about it now. What's the point? It feels like after everything I've done, I'm stuck waiting for my future to start again. I won't be able to see my friends together easily anymore, so I'm stuck with seemingly no choice but to go back to doing what I was before, but my heart isn't in it. I don't want to just make content that I know would do well just for the views, just for money. And I don't want to parrot what every other content creator is talking about. Nor do I want to make stuff that people watch once and never think about again. I want to make something meaningful, something that actually speaks to people. But how can you do that when the very thing you used to find meaning in seemingly doesn't have it anymore? Because I didn't want to go back to doing the same thing I was doing before creatively and couldn't replace that with anything new, I just kept circling back to what I had lost in my life. I kept thinking back to how happy I was before graduation when I could see all of my friends at any moment and how I was never going back to that. I thought about how badly I wish scenarios went in the past that I could have made my present different. It had been a vicious mental cycle. I felt like I was both waiting to become myself again and being scared that I had lost part of myself for weeks. I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know what was next.
We are obsessed with the future. Online discourse and content creation nowadays feels like there's a non-stop focus on the new. In order to appease the algorithm, you have to constantly make new content. If you want to stay relevant and in the discussion, you have to not only be on top of new releases, but also have something to say about them. And if you want to be successful, you have to commit yourself to doing something that your audience will be receptive towards. For a while, I was doing that through my content, initially just for fun, but eventually for more as I got a bigger platform. But it feels like the second you step out of this cycle, it's incredibly difficult to try it and find your place in it again, or even if you would want to find it in the first place. There are new games and new things to talk about pretty much all the time, and on paper, games should be better and more exciting than they've ever been, but there's been a growing sentiment over the past few years that games just aren't as fun as they used to be. There's a lot of underlying factors to this, from the obvious criticism that can be thrown at anti-consumer trends and games releasing borderline unfinished despite costing more now. But for myself, even with games that are objectively on paper great, I haven't had the same excitement that I thought I would get from them. For the past year alone, there have been numerous titles that while I was excited for at the start, they didn't end up becoming long-lasting experiences that stuck with me. As someone who played Splatoon 1 and 2 for hundreds of hours and literally screamed my head off when they announced Splatoon 3, I pretty much just played the story mode, a little bit of multiplayer, and when I finished it, I never went back to it. I had waited for a Metroid Prime Remastered for years and bought it the second it got announced, and then found myself only playing it for a couple of hours. And while Tears of the Kingdom initially made a really strong impression, after playing through half of the dungeons, I found that I was forcing myself to keep playing more of it just to try and find something that I could take and turn it into a video, which I honestly couldn't. Maybe this is because I've been playing games my entire life, and as I've gotten older, it's becoming harder and harder for games to do things that I haven't seen before. When I first started making content, I didn't feel this way because having an outlet for me to express what I love felt new and exciting, and I started to pay less attention to that as I was occupying my time with classes, my social life, work, actual responsibilities. But now that I don't have that anymore, I became creatively stuck when it came to making content. If I truly wasn't able to get anything meaningful out of my hobby, all that I was left with was mourning the loss of my past life, which started a vicious cycle. All I could focus on was how much my heart missed my friends and things that kept me busy. I went back to thinking about what I could have done differently to keep people in my life, even though I know I'm better off now. And because I have to wait to be able to start doing things again in my professional life, I couldn't find anything immediately apparent to lift myself out of my slump, or distracted myself with creative outlets. And it felt like I was beginning to spiral. If I can't find myself in a hobby that's progressively focused on the future, what am I supposed to do when I'm trying to find my place again? What am I supposed to do when I'm waiting for my future to start? It was when I was 13 that I first played what became one of my favorite games of all time, Xenoblade Chronicles. This game made an incredible impact on me as it changed my perception of what games could be and what they could do. It was the first time I had played something that told a grandiose story. I got hooked with how in-depth and complex its gameplay could get, and I fell in absolute love with its world and its characters. And now, in a time where I feel so much stress from trying to get meaning out of something that's new, and everything telling me that I needed to focus on the future to stay relevant, I found myself going back to an experience that I had known like the back of my hand. It's funny that I began to find solace about my current state of waiting for new things to come through a game that's so focused on the future. The main protagonist, Shulk, can see into the future with his sword, the Monado, and the entire game focuses around him and his friends using that power to understand more of the world around them, while desperately trying to change their futures and struggling with the reality that they can't always do so. Xenoblade 1 is over a decade old now, and when I first played it as a kid, I was enraptured by the fantastical setting of a world composed of the bodies of 2 dead titans, and the huge plot beats of anime-style power-ups and lore dumps that reveal more about the world itself. I think it made as large of an impact on me as it did because it was the first time I had experienced something like that in the form of a game. And in the time since I first played Xenoblade, I've played countless other games that are mechanically tighter and more streamlined, and games that are far more technologically impressive, yet none of those games made me feel the same way that I felt playing Xenoblade for the first time. Going back to Xenoblade again for the first time in years felt nostalgic, but not only was I getting more enjoyment out of it than I was from everything else that I was playing that was more new and recent, I was gaining things from playing it now that I'm older that I didn't appreciate when I was younger. This game already does such a great job at making its main cast of characters feel like family, which is what made me fall in love with them initially. But now I find myself empathizing with the characters way more now than I ever had because of the life experience that I've gained. I know more now about what it's like to lose someone you loved. I know now what it's like to constantly think about what could have been done differently. I know what it's like to have been lied to. It makes these characters that I already loved feel even more relatable and makes the bigger plot moments where they overcome these hurdles feel even more powerful. As we get older, I think we constantly try and chase that feeling of experiencing something incredible that we hadn't before. We look for things that will change us, and we look for things that will impact us in the same way that other things did when we were younger, when everything was shaping ourselves and our futures because our experience was limited. But as we get older, that becomes progressively harder. We get more experience, we become more jaded, things don't impress as much anymore, so we constantly look to what we don't have to give us fulfillment. And sometimes, even when we get those things, it doesn't end up being what we needed. We constantly feel like we need to go towards things that we don't have yet, but maybe having the time to pause, even when we don't want to and don't like where we are, can be necessary. Playing through Xenoblade again, in a weird way, helped me realize that. Yeah, playing it again brought back more memories of nostalgia of when I first played it, but reflecting on these memories makes me realize how far I've grown and how much I've done since I first played this game. 12 to 13-year-old me probably couldn't have imagined the people I would have ended up meeting and becoming friends with, the places that I've been able to go and see, the things I've accomplished both professionally and creatively. Even myself 1 year ago probably wouldn't have been able to imagine half the stuff that I've done since then. And reflecting on that through this game helps me feel more content with where I am right now. I may never have another game that speaks to me the same way that Xenoblade did because I'm more experienced and have become used to what games can do, but I found that going back to it in a different stage of my life was able to give me more perspective than anything new I was playing. And in this season that I'm in now, it's a reminder of how I probably have to do the same for my past and my personal life. We're always so focused on the future. It can be through small things like putting out a new video or talking about a game that's coming out next. But even in our personal lives, we can be so focused on things that we don't have yet. When will that job that will help me kick off my career open up? When will I find that partner that I'll be able to properly grow and love with for the rest of my life? Will all of this stress that's constantly flooding our world ever ease up? It's so easy to fall into a mental pit with this, and it's a process that I'm still working on myself. But I've recognized that in situations like these, that perspective is so important, especially when we need to consider what we do have or what we have done. Yeah, I haven't posted or uploaded anything in a while, but that doesn't diminish the growth that I have had with my platform and my skills as a creator. I won't be able to see my friends as often, but the real ones will stick around, even if it isn't frequent, and we'll have the memories that we made forever. Some people aren't in my life anymore, and that hurts. But I've grown from it, and I'm stronger now because of it, and I can't let my current circumstances make me backpedal on things that I've been healing from. Playing through Xenoblade again didn't magically make all my negative feelings go away. I went through numerous ups and downs throughout the process of making this video, and I still don't have it all figured out yet, or am completely satisfied with where I am right now. But it did serve as a reminder for me to find comfort in my faith as well, which will always be there for me. Even though I'm dissatisfied with how certain situations in my life turned out, God can and will make good come from them if I rely on Him for peace. Sometimes things don't change and go the way you want it to, and it can be incredibly hard to see it in the moment when you're in the waiting process, but there will be reasons for the pain and heartache. Things in the future that will make all of those feelings dwarf. It's hard to see right now, but I'm not the same as I was before, and I'm stronger now because of what I've lost, and that's a good thing. I haven't stopped wanting what I don't have yet, but I can't let my lack define me. Everything happens for a reason, and everything that I lack will be added on to me in His perfect timing. But in the meantime, I also feel better now about making content when I do. Allowing myself the opportunity to process and work out these feelings in this outlet made me realize that my passions are still here. The places it may be in just may be different and not aligned with current trends, and that's okay. I don't want to force myself to make content just because it feels like I have to get views. Finding new ways to express myself in its entirety is more important to me now. And even if this video bombs, if at least one person is encouraged by what I had to say and what I went through, it'll make it worth it. So if you're feeling discontent with where you are now, even if it feels like you shouldn't be, allow yourself to process that. But also take the time to reflect on where you've been. Whether it be good or bad, it helped turn you into who you are now. Whatever that comes in the future isn't going to magically change who you are now, but you can change how you prepare for your future.